2, 1. I'm opening.
Hello.
Hi,
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Fireside chat. As many of you know, this is a 25th year of Thai Boston, what used to be called Thai Atlantic. We have been celebrating this year throughout the year. We had a gala in May, and we've been celebrating all the founders of Thai throughout the year. We had 13 original founders of Thai Boston, and one of them is no longer with us, Ashok. And we had 7 of these fireside chats already. This is the 8th one, and we are going to have 4 more coming very soon. So hopefully we can get all of them in before end of the year. Today we're going to be talking to a dear friend of mine, and Ashok Boghani, and this will be moderated by Santhana, who's also a very close friend of mine. So it's a fun session. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not going to do the introduction for Ashok because I can go on for a while, but I'm going to leave that to Santhana. But I will talk a little bit about Santhana. Santhana, I go back 36 years. I was probably one of the first person he met in the country in 1986. We met in school at Clarkson University, upstate New York. And a long story, but at the end of various jobs, we ended up together at HP. And we left HP to start a company called Intellect in 1995. And it was an incredible journey of 15 years of ups and downs until we had an exit in 2010. We sold the company to Computer Associates. After that, Santhana had a change of heart from the tech into going to art, and he started one of the first gallery that was focused on promoting Southeast Asian art, called Asian Art Gallery. And art you see in, I don't have it in my background right now because I have Thai Boston logo, but Santhana's, you can see the background of Santhana. All that is from the Asian Art Gallery. Most recently, Santhana has started a new company called Dwellin, with the mindset and philosophy that every home can be more environmentally sustainable. And it's an incredible app that allows you to really track carbon footprint and maintenance cost of over 100 million homes in the US. It's got an AI-powered technology that helps you kind of baseline your consumption as well. Besides tracking that, it also helps you reduce your cost of maintenance and reducing the carbon footprint. So it's an incredible, once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. So he's back onto that journey. If you guys have not tried it out, check it out at dwellin.com, download the app and give it a shot. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Santhana to then take it from here.
Thanks, Yash. Welcome, Ashok. And hello, everyone. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with a dear friend of mine from Boston who has moved to Pasadena, right, Ashok?
That's correct, yeah.
It's, I've known you and Meera for over 25 years now. But I have to tell you, every time I meet you, I learn something new about you. But more importantly, I like the way you have balanced your life and how you live. So I always look into things I can do, which you're doing, which I can bring it into my life and make it interesting. So I think to the viewers, you will understand by the time we finish the session today, why I said what I said. But let me start with Ashok. What kind of the formative years of Ashok? What really happened? What formed you? Why are you who you are today?
Oh, why am I who I am? That's a tough question. But thank you, Santhana, for the kind words. That's very nice of you. Yeah, so formative years. I grew up in Saurashtra, part of Gujarat, which is the peninsula you see when you look at the map, in Junagadh, Bhavnagar, and then Rajkot, until I went to school in Mumbai, the final year of SSC. So my influence was from my parents and as well as grandparents. And they both had interesting journeys. My grandfather on father's side worked in Burma for many, many years. And my father was born there, and they were quite well settled in Burma. If it weren't for a Japanese invasion during World War II, I would have been Burmese, not Indian. But Japanese invasion came. My father, grandmother, others came back by some of the last boats coming out of Burma from Yangon. And then my grandfather was missing for many months until he was found. He had walked all the way from Yangon or Rangoon to India and managed to get back to Rajkot. So we were penniless at that time. And my father keeps saying that he went to medical college only because he had scholarships. And on my mother's side, my grandfather was a journalist, Gujarati language journalist, and never had much money, but wielded quite a bit of influence. And he taught the lesson of doing more with less, and also the Gandhian principles. My family came from that kind of environment. So he put his children, all these 5 daughters, into interesting educational pathways. And my mother ended up becoming a medical doctor. So at that time, it was quite unusual. So they both met my parents. They both were medical doctors, and then started their journey from Junagadh. So interesting times when I grew up.
And also, I remember you mentioning that your grandfather walked back from Yangon.
Right. He walked all the way from Yangon to Imphal in India. And it was just a harrowing journey, as you can imagine.
Must have taken months, huh?
Yeah, he took, and my father used to go to railroad station to see if he had come, because there was no way of communicating. And one fine day he appeared. So quite an interesting story.
So what brought you to the US?
So then I went to Mumbai, I got my SSC and then first year science, and then applied for IIT joint entrance exam. Got into IIT Bombay. I spent 5 years there. I'm class of 1970. And then I applied to several universities in US. And then I got into MIT, which that admission I could not refuse, although I had some other admissions, but MIT in India was considered like God at that time. So came to US in 1970 and did my PhD from there, finished in 1974. And that was the beginning of my career in the US. So more than 50 years ago now.
Wow. And then you got married, you went back to India to get married?
Actually, I joined Foster Miller, first thing I did.
Okay.
I was looking for a job and it was hard to find jobs that time, and Foster Miller was kind enough to get me in. And you might know some of those people. One of the guys, Adi Gazdar.
Yeah,
very well. So Adi was my boss's boss, and the Khushru captain was my boss, both from MIT. And then I worked on high-speed, I worked on air cushion landing systems when I was working with Foster Miller, which was an interesting topic. Worked at NASA at that time period. And then went to India in 77, met Meera, who you know quite well, and got married, came back, worked with Foster Miller for maybe 1 more year, 2 more years, and then joined Arthur D. Little. And that's where I made my career, basically 21 years at Arthur D. Little.
And who hired you at Arthur D. Little?
Ranganath Nayak, who is another fellow charter member. And Ashok Kalalkar was also in the interview process. So I met both these guys, who were both my fellow mentors over the years. And I learned a lot from them. And they are the ones who introduced me to TIE, because they had joined this new organization which was forming under Deshpande's leadership, Deshpande and Samir and others. So they said, Ashok, why don't you come and attend a meeting? So 3 of us from Arthur D. Little ended up joining TIE as founding charter members.
That's interesting. So So I remember one of the things you mentioned was your first job was your dream job, right? At a consulting project you did at NASA. That was at ADL.
Yes, and because I was influenced by NASA and the moon landings. Any kid growing up at my time, seeing the satellites and then moon landing, I said, aha, this is the organization I want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So Foster Miller had a assignment with NASA.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. And I worked with the NASA Langley Center on air question landing system. Yeah, so that was...
It was early 70s or
Yeah.
late 70s.
So, yeah, and then...
And also, one of the things I've been by talking to earlier, when you've done some very interesting project at ADL, which is like all relevant today. Maybe you can touch upon a couple of them just to give, because I found it fascinating during that time to imagine the future. Maybe you can touch upon some of these projects.
Yeah, sure. So at Arthur D. Little, it was very fortunate that we ended up doing some very interesting work. The one which stands out is the assignment I did for telephone companies. At that time, there were many telephone companies, if you remember.
9X.
In the 91 timeframe, so early 90s. And there was a multi-client study I did on telecommunications substituting transportation. At that time, the beginning days of internet, this whole idea called telecommuting. Oh my God, what do? You don't have to go to office to work. No, you can work from home using your computer. And the other thing called tele-shopping. Oh my God, you don't have to go to a mall to do some shopping. No, you can do it from home. And even more surprising, teleconferencing, that maybe you don't go to a conference you can attend by staying at home. So I did analysis of what are the societal benefits of these kind of substitutions in terms of savings for gasoline saving, the energy saving, pollution saving, maintenance cost reduction, and improvement of productivity because you don't have to commute and go to places. And I put a dollar amount using analysis of what a typical saving in each one of them will cost. And came out with a number which was $23 billion per year, given certain amount of substitution. And this report got quite a bit of publicity. It was announced in New York Times and Wall Street Journal and Boston Globe. The US Senate considered that in one of the deliberations when they were thinking of investing into high bandwidth network. And then I remember Al Gore's office requested a copy, so that was kind of nice. So almost 3,000 copies got distributed. For ADL, it was a big time. Another group of studies I did were on what is called intelligent vehicle highway systems. At that time, the idea that a car or a truck can have electronics on board and telecommunication systems on board, and the way of figuring out where you are. This is sort of pre-GPS initially because GPS was not allowed for civilian use. So I did quite a few studies for different companies interested in these technologies and also participated in US government committee looking at IVHS. So that's another interesting assignment I did. Third one I wanted to mention was Channel Tunnel, Eurotunnel. When that was being planned, connecting France and England with a tunnel. So my company, Arthur D. Little, worked on what kind of connection would it be, car or train or mixed hybrid kind of connection. And then I did studies on the safety and security related to the transportation going through.
Interesting.
Because again, through Ashok Kalalkar, I got into risk management for transportation systems.
I see.
So did that and did some interesting testing in a secret location in France where nobody can come and look at what we were doing. Trying to figure out how quickly can things be evacuated in case of an emergency. So it was an interesting times. Anyway, yeah, I worked on so many projects between Foster Miller and Arthur D. Little, and later on Monitor. I counted at the end, and I had done 700 projects or proposals or internal studies. So quite a variety.
Yeah, the other thing I remember you mentioning also that the 300-mile-per-hour train from Boston to Washington, D.C., this was
Yeah,
So
that was part of my PhD thesis. At that time, there was the flowering of high-tech transportation, if I may say. All kinds of ideas were coming out. And one of them was, why don't we put an air cushion vehicle, a hovercraft, in a trough and put a guideway and make it run at 300 miles per hour. So you can cover Boston to Washington within an hour and a half or 2 hours. So my thesis was on designing a suspension system for such a vehicle.
Interesting.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. And then Grumman built a test vehicle, which we tested in Pueblo, Colorado. There was a transportation test center. Unfortunately, it ended up in a museum. I had nothing, something I can show and say, aha, I designed it. No.
But it's funny though, right? I mean, like 30, 40 years later, now we are seeing some of these things happen and being taken advantage. And you kind of had to imagine that during that period.
I can't claim more that I imagined a lot of them, but it's our group of us who are doing work on this stuff.
Yeah, it was very fascinating. Now, actually, it's funny that you're probably one of the few people I know I know all of the people who you work for. Adi, Ranganath Nayak.
In Ashok.
Actually, Ashok was on my board, mine and Yasha's company's board. Too bad he's the only person who's not here. But I think all of your intellects and great role models for the rest of the people in the Boston area. So let me ask you now, Ty, within Ty, you played a lot of roles. I mean, I think a lot of critical roles. Not many people probably remember that. So maybe you can just go through some of the things which you did on earlier days of Ty.
So when I joined Ty, I was working for a startup company called Intellect Exchange, which you might remember. But when I left Arthur D. Little, I was working on a lot of management consulting assignments. I had drifted over from technology to management consulting and was getting involved with scenario planning and strategic planning and stuff like that. So some of the stuff I did for Ty were related to that work. So one of the things I did was to do a visioning workshop for Ty, trying to figure out what Ty should look like 5 years from then, given the environment. And if that is what Ty should look like, what are the strategies which you can develop to get from here to there? You were there, I think, part of the
yellow stickies.
Yeah, yellow stickies those times. So I did that. Then I was also involved with a thing called Ty Workshop. So we used to have an annual workshop in which experts used to come and talk about some specific tasks of entrepreneurship. And we used to do this in Babson, so a whole morning or 6 hours or so. So I ran Ty workshops for a couple of years. Then I was TyCon co-chair in 2000 and TyCon chair for 2001. I don't know if I just pulled it out, but this is something which we used to.
I remember that.
I was just going through that, and 22 years have gone by. And we had a lot of fun pulling the workshop together. At that time, and I suppose it still is, it was the largest gathering of entrepreneurs in Northeast, and second only to Ty Silicon. So we had a really good session there. So I did that, and then I was involved with towards the later years, TYE, Young Entrepreneurs. And this idea was Geeta Ramamurthy's, if you remember her. But she called me in and she said, Ashok, we have this new program and maybe you can run a workshop for them. So we did several idea generation workshops. which we used to ask these young folks about envisioning the world 5 years from now, 5 years from then, and what kinds of entrepreneurial opportunities will exist in that framework. And out of that, come out with some business ideas. And I was totally floored what kind of ideas they came out with. And then the third part was, okay, these are the ideas. What do you think? What are the barriers you will come across, and how are you going to solve them? Come out with some kind of rough business plan about what you will do, and then make presentations. And we had a great time. I think those were some of the best things I have done in Thai.
Yeah.
And then Thai New York called me in and said, can you run the same thing? So I did that with them. So yeah, there was some interesting sessions. And then finally I served on the board of Thai for a couple of years under Pret Moge. And then Vanita Shastri was there.
Was the executive director.
And yeah, we worked on that. And one of the things I was doing then was to come out with various models of Thai. What exactly is Thai? If you think about it, the Thai can be considered as many different things. And this is something which even now maybe something we need to talk about. Is Thai an NGO, an angel fund, a trade show organization, a country club for charter members, a trade group? What are we? So this is something which we started thinking about then. So those are the kinds of things I got involved with at Thai.
I mean, this visioning workshop is an interesting idea. Maybe I think one of the things we should discuss maybe at the end, if you have time or later.
Yeah.
I mean, that everybody could benefit from it because the world has changed dramatically, and applying to the current environment is probably, all of the projects which you worked on, telecommuting and all of those things is happening right now because of post-reason.
The world has changed. Post-pandemic, in the sense that pandemic was a major event for giving a boost to some of these technologies, some of these applications.
Yeah, that's very true. So I know that you briefly mentioned Intellect Exchange.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe just, this was in 2000 time frame, right?
2000 to 2003. We did a startup. There's a Chinese fellow, Charles Su, and he had met Deshpande about this idea, and Desh said, why don't you talk to Ashok? So he talked to me, and I decided to give the comforts of Arthur D. Little and join a startup like many of us were doing at that time. And the idea was to create an eBay for expertise. So you can on call get experts in almost any subject you want, and do a contract with them and have them for an hour or two. And now, of course, it's a very common idea, but at that time it wasn't. And when we were developing this, and I gave a couple of talks, even at Arthur D. Little, and said that the model of consulting is going to change. Instead of people spending full time on consulting, that you might be able to tap into consultants wherever they are in the world. And that was sort of the vision.
I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Now, I was saying that we did it for 3 years, and then timing was terrible because the whole NASDAQ was collapsing and funding was tough to come by. But what I found is that it equally well applied within a corporate structure. In my familiar grounds, consulting. So Monitor Group hired me to do an Intellect Exchange within Monitor.
Wow, okay.
Which is what I did for the last 9 years, 8-9 years of my career. So the idea turned out to be quite good.
It's funny because I myself had used that from another company for my venture right now. So I'd hired somebody in Romania who was an awesome addition, and I hired somebody from Germany who was a Brazilian in Germany, a US expert. So I think it just getting those resources on a full time. There's no way I could have afforded those, right? And it just worked. For us, getting them for a couple of weeks, 20 hours a week, it did a lot of magic for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then when I was there, I also did some workshops on telemedicine, which was another thing which was coming up. The idea of not having to visit a doctor, you can do it on using telecommunication. This was again 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
Now coming home to roost, so to speak.
Exactly. So then, and I don't like the word retirement, like just like Serena Williams, the word she used was evolution. When she decided to stop tennis, I'm going to call it next phase. When you decided to not earn money in the sense that you wanted to say, I want to do what I want, the next phase of life. Tell me a bit about what you did after you quit Monitor Group.
Yeah, so, at Monitor, the last assignment I did was for a very well-known company which was making air fresheners. And after doing a strategic planning and technology strategy study for them, I had kind of an epiphany, as you say. I said, hey, I can do better with my life than design better air fresheners. So decided to go part-time and then quit in 2012, 10 years ago now, almost exactly. And then was looking for what I should do next. And this is kind of the next phase because there was a lot of movement, even from people I knew, that there is a time to retire, the word retirement, that retirement doesn't make sense anymore. Hopefully, we are all going to live a long time and stay healthy and do things. And when I was in my 60s, I probably had 30 more years. I don't know how many years I have, but potentially it can be a lot of time. So I'm not going to sit in a hammock and on a beach. So looking around, I found this organization called Executive Service Corps, which is actually within US, there are like 12, 13 chapters, ESC. And I called them up and joined them. And the idea there is to use people like us to provide pro bono management consulting services to nonprofits.
Wow.
Because nonprofits start out with great founders with great passion.
Yeah.
They most often don't have an idea of how to run it. And it ends up in financial trouble, and then it's grounded and money dries up. So I joined ESC soon after I retired. And then I did several assignments, including one for Metco. You remember Metco, the organization which buses inner city school kids to suburban schools. So I did a strategic planning assignment for them at a crucial period when they were having some issues, and did several assignments for other organizations within Boston. And then I was on the board of ESC, and then I was chairman of the board for a couple of years. And this is when we decided to make a big difference, make a big change after a few years. My father, we were taking care of my father. You remember him?
Yep.
And he unfortunately passed away in 2018 after having lived a very long life, 96 years old. And Meera, then I talked to Meera and said, maybe it's time to go to the next phase of our lives. Our kids were both in Los Angeles by then.
Yeah.
So let's go to LA. But before we do that, let's make a drastic change in our lives. So we said, okay, let's get rid of most of the stuff we own. So I did that. Meera was still working. I started selling off, donating most of the stuff from our house, where whatever was left was put in a small container and shipped off to Los Angeles. And then us with basically we had 2 suitcases and 2 backpacks. We decided that we are going to be nomadic for at least a year. Maybe then we'll figure out what we want to do. So we took off. Initially went to Los Angeles, stayed in many Airbnbs, trying to figure out where we want to live, explored some parts of California, and then 3 months in Asia and 2 months on the East Coast and Northern Canada, Yukon and all those places. And then 2 months in Europe, Turkey and Greece. And so had a great time. So after we were out there, we stayed in, I was counting 87 different places within that 13-month period.
My God.
And we moved. I'm a good spreadsheet person, so I knew all this stuff.
Management consultant.
Consultant, right? And moved 127 times in those 400 days.
Oh
So
my
we were
God.
moving every third day. So
Wow.
pack up the stuff and move to the next destination. What a blast we had. And then after that, we said, okay, maybe it's time to rent something in LA for a longer time period. So we rented something in Pasadena. Our kids said that you like Pasadena. And we said, yeah. And then after a year and a half or so, then COVID hit. So of course, all our dreams of traveling more could not come true. Okay, all right. So, and then our landlord came and said, would you like to buy this house? Not that we had much of a choice because he was going to give it to somebody else otherwise. I did. So now we are settled in Pasadena. That's what we do. So it was an eye-opening experience not to own anything for a time period and be completely footloose.
Yeah, yeah. When I think about it, you probably took a bigger risk than any entrepreneur at Thai has ever taken, right? This is gambling with your life, saying, I'm going to jump in and, live out of a suitcase, at a later stage. That's amazing. I mean, 127. I mean, most of it is Airbnb, I'm assuming.
Airbnb, hotels, friends, and family.
Okay.
So all of them. I called up my IT friend.
They should give you a special badge, million values. Like airlines, Airbnb should be just honoring you with a medal of something.
Booking.com has given me kind of special treatment now. They give me so many % discount and stuff like that. So yeah, it was fun planning our own trip, planning our own things, and staying in places for days and weeks instead of a few hours kind of thing.
And also along the way, I remember that you got into, I mean, even now, art and music and photography, just, how did that come about? I mean,
so I was always interested in two things, photography and music, classical music, Western classical music, actually. And right from my photography from childhood, because my father was a photographer, I mean, he used to take pictures, but music from my mighty days. And I decided to join camera clubs, learn more about it. And then I got involved with digital processing. So not just taking pictures, but manipulating using Photoshops. So that's what I've been doing. And I part in competitions. I've had a one-man show in photography. I even in your gallery, I had a few pictures, my abstract pictures.
I bought one of them.
You bought one of them, I remember that. And then the music part, then I expanded that and I said that most Indians are not involved with Western classical music. Maybe I can put together a document to explain basics of what it is, which I did, about 50-page long, send it out to people and in India, New England, and they published part of that. But then I realized maybe what is time during COVID time is I can have a course. I can have a Zoom course on that step by step. So I did that with my family, friends, and with the IIT guys, IIT cohorts. And 11 sessions later, I kind of gave them a very basic understanding. Then I started combining the two, the music and photography. See if I can create a slideshow and put Western classical music on the top of it. So that's what I started doing. A third thing was something which you helped me introduce. You introduced me was to write a blog. I don't know if you remember, but 2009 or so, you said, hey, Ashok, why don't you write a blog? So I started doing it. So 2023, I'm still writing 150 blog posts. So those things keep me alive. And then we are into hiking. We love to hike, and LA, actually, believe it or not, is a great place for hiking. Where Pasadena, we are right next to mountains. These are 10,000 foot high mountain next to us. This is not something which is small. In a lot of trails, we do that, and we got into bicycling. We went biking in Europe and in North America. And then I got involved with traveling to cold places, Antarctica and Arctic, did some of that.
Mhm.
So I can't complain, trying to
Yeah.
live a full life, as they say.
So one of the things I'd asked you when we were preparing for this was, I've always been fascinated how balanced you kind of lived and live even now, and the philosophy behind it. So you had created something which I wanted to
Yeah.
share with the rest of the group here. So let me just
Yeah.
once, so that you can explain to them how you go about.
All right. So I was thinking about uh, different activities, and like a good management consultant, I thought I'll put them into 2x3 matrix, which is what this is. And I came out with this 6-box matrix. And again, my thinking is that to live a well-balanced life, you have to participate in each one of these 6. Not only that, in as much as possible, participate in each one every day. So you can shift your focus back and forth between each one of these. So the middle one are the intellectual activities, if you want to call them. Left brain and right brain. Left brain is what most of us do all our career. Intellectual work, but you can add reading and writing to that when you start having more time, like in retirement. And the right brain activities is what I was describing, the art and music and photography and other stuff. And I find that fascinating. I'm spending more time on that than the intellectual stuff. I don't get as fascinated by engineering anymore as I do with abstract art and music, and how does music get composed and those kind of things. The bottom two, right, is the fitness activities and walking, hiking, biking, playing sports, gym, club, whatever. And the idea there is that these things may not increase the quantity of your life, but will certainly improve the quality of your life. Because I see many of my cohorts, and I'm in my early 70s now, not able to do some of this stuff, and their quality deteriorates because they go to a place and they can't just walk around and hike around and do things like that. 2 years ago, when we were doing this stuff in Japan, we did a biking trip all by ourselves. That was such a different view of Japan than if you are in a group. So, and then there are fun activities. You have to do, traveling is of course primary for most of us. It ends up becoming a major activity, especially early part of retirement. And then entertainment, watching movies, gastronomy. California has all kinds of wines, so different types of wines you can try out. But 2 very important activities are at the top. And I call them emotional, for the lack of better word. Some people call it spiritual, but I'm not into spiritual stuff, so I'll call it emotional. Socializing, friends and family. This is the time in retirement when you can spend time with them. And many of my cohorts are retired, so even long distance, it's great to be in touch with them. And then very important is giving back activities, which most of us do. Many of us are in philanthropy, mentoring, but also volunteering. And my point here is that a lot of us do this for India, but I think we should equally well do it for here, for America. This country has given us a lot of opportunities. And there are many people in this country which are not as fortunate as us, whether they are inner city school kids or whether they are immigrants and disadvantaged people. So whatever we can do for them. Now, I do consulting for them, for the organizations, but all of us can do something with them. So that's something which I find it very useful. So this is sort of in a nutshell, what my thing is.
It's good because the part of the thing is, look, usually people don't pick up learning. I mean, when I was talking to you earlier, that you had said that you were trying to understand music from a different angle, right? Which is what makes a particular note person feeling sad or happy.
Yes.
You're trying to get to the bottom of that. I mean, I was like fascinated when you said that.
Yeah.
Because at later stages in life, people just want to just chill out and not, but I think acquiring new knowledge is as important, right? And just keeps you going. So I think
Absolutely. And reading, learn about quantum mechanics, learn about special theory of relativity, learn about biology. I'm into biology right now, biochemistry and molecular bio, which I don't know much about at all. But it's a fascinating subject. So yeah, keep your brain active.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think I'll join you for the wine tasting.
Anytime, man, anytime.
Right. So anyway, I think what your favorite quote, which is what you're living by, is, I think you had mentioned the Henry David Thoreau's, "When I come to die, I should not feel that I had not lived." And
yes,
I mean, I think that when you said that, that's very true, right? Which that's you live by that, and you have a balance, and you're just going to have a very enriched life. So.
Thank you. So far, so good.
All right. So I've got, okay, so we are at a point where I'm just a rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Wherever I am.
Oh,
because you can always find the best things wherever you are. It
Great.
doesn't really.
Sunrise or sunset?
A sunrise.
Why?
It's always a new day coming up.
Enjoy
it. Don't think about sunset.
What's the first thing you notice about someone when you meet them?
The gregariousness, whether this person is going to be interesting in chatting with him or not, or that's what I try to find out, because I do enjoy talking to people, and that's yeah.
If you could be any animal, what would it be?
Any animal, a penguin.
Penguin, why?
I enjoy looking at penguin, and it has a very kind of a stately way of living things, and it does. Yeah, right. I don't know. It lives in a nice area, which I kind of enjoy, Antarctica. So.
What scares you?
The status of this country. I mean, how optimistic I am when I see that. Anyway, it's the political argument, but there's some really scary currents right now going on.
Who is your inspiration and why?
I would say probably Mahatma Gandhi, in the sense that I was brought up with that, and I still think is one of the greatest men alive ever. But otherwise, Henry David Thoreau, because Thoreau also studied under, he got inspired by Gandhi and Gandhian philosophy. And I've read a couple of his books, and I thought he had some really good points. And we live in Acton, so right next to us. Yeah.
If you could travel to any year in a time machine, what year would you choose and why?
I would choose a future year, not the past year, because I think some great things are going to be happening. When I look at my granddaughter and said she's going to do things which I would not do in my lifetime, she would go to space, and her grandchildren might go to Mars, for example.
Yeah.
And that is something which I would have loved to do, but too late for me.
No, you never know. They get.
I know I'm not going to live to 200, 150 years, but anyway.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Do the best you can in whatever you pick up. Which is what my father told me when I was growing up. He says, just do the best.
I keep telling my kids, always show up. Right? Show up. Favorite day of the week?
After you're retired, it doesn't make any difference. They all look alike. They all Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But the only thing is, I would say Sunday, because that's when our kids are free and we can get together with them.
What advice would you give your young self?
My young self, enjoy the life, whatever it throws you. Don't be intimidated.
LA or Boston?
You're going to ask it. I like both. They both have really, really good. I mean, how can I not like Boston? I lived there for 48 years. Wow, it's a great city, absolutely a great city. But we are getting used to living here, and there are a lot of positive aspects about California and about the surrounding areas. So, yeah.
That's
And
good.
as I said before, whichever place you live is, you learn to like.
Yeah, great. Ashok, it's been a pleasure. Look forward to meeting you in person sometime soon. And let me hand it over to
Thank you.
Rowena and Laurie and see if there's any questions from the chat, which people want to ask.
Thank you so much, Santhana and Ashok, for this riveting. The rapid fire round was simply fascinating. Yes, we have some questions. The first question is related to the initial part of this fireside chat, which was around, Ashok's conversation as to what exactly TIE was. So the question is, finally, what's the answer, Ashok? What is TIE from your perspective?
Well, TIE is a place where entrepreneurs can get all kinds of help, encouragement, financial help, mentoring, and that's always been the case. Now, the difference when we joined was what were the technology challenges at that time, and it was more IT related and more internet related. That was the coming thing at that time. Things are different now because those things are more or less established. So TIE will have to be relevant and helpful to the entrepreneurs in the coming age. And two things I can think of. One was the post-pandemic era, because as we were chatting, Santhana and I, that the ramifications of pandemic are just beginning. I mean, there are some major changes coming up in the way we get educated, the way we work, the way we do our traveling, whatever. The virtual is becoming more real now than before. And the second area, which I think is going to be, I would say, pre-climate catastrophe. I think that we are going to go through a catastrophic period. Climate change is inevitable. And even look at this year. So how are we going to prepare for what's coming down the pike? What things will help humanities to, in an extreme case, to survive in the next 100 years? So I think those are two areas where there might be things which I can get involved with.
Mhm.
Did I answer the question? I don't know. I went about roundabout there.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, you did. Laurie, is there another question you'd like to read out, please?
Yes, we have one more question about TIE. Does Ashok remember any early debates around the formation and future of TIE and questions they struggled with the most?
I think at that time, this is a long time ago, so I don't remember. But one of the things was the funding, the angel forum, whether how much will TIE get involved with funding various entrepreneurial activities. And it wasn't established and clear at that point about what it can do. The second was, there was a debate about, can the stuff which the members of TIE are inventing or creating, can that be adopted by TIE itself? Like, for example, the company I was with, Intellect Exchange, the expert exchange, there was an issue whether we should use that for TIE itself, because will there be a conflict of interest? Because, I am a TIE charter member and I'm also a senior VP of the Intellect Exchange. But then it was decided that, yeah, it's fine, that will work. But that was another issue which came up during that time period. But we did this visioning workshop and we came out with some ideas about what will be useful to the entrepreneurs, and we just followed up on that. But again, I don't remember exactly what various debates were in putting it together.
Right. That was a good one. We have a comment which says, wonderful interview. This is from Adam Carter. I love your story of downsizing to travel, as well as your intellectual curiosity, exploring different sides of the brain. We also share common heroes in Thoreau and Gandhi. And then there's another comment that's coming in from Dinesh Patel, Dr. Dinesh Patel. He says, Ashok and Santhana, great coincidence that today happens to be the birthday for Lord Krishna, Gita chapter 247. And your prescribed duty without anticipating any fruits, the godfather of entrepreneurship, great event, thanks. I come back to another very interesting question. This one's from Anu Chitrapu. It says, absolutely great chat. Question for Ashok. Love the 2x3 matrix. In the intellectual row, do you distinguish between consumption and creation? As in, should one seek to also create art, photography, and music in addition to consuming them?
Right. I mean, it's an interesting point, but my feeling is that unless you create, you can't consume very well. At least you won't get an idea of what does consumption mean. So let me give an example. Abstract art. When you go to a museum and look at stuff and you say, what the hell is this? When I got involved with creating it, it gave me a much better perspective of what I was looking at when I looked at it, something. So the creation really helps you in consuming. And same thing with music. I'm now taking a course which is going into the fundamentals of music theory. And at the end of the course, we are supposed to put together a composition based on what came out. You know, certain notes sound, as Santhana was saying, certain notes played in the correct order sound better than certain other notes. And then, there is theory behind it. If I get to that level, I would have a much better understanding of what the composers were doing when they composed what they did. So, of course, consumption maybe comes first, but you can consume a lot better if you have some understanding and creation.
Yes.
So that's kind of my 2 bits worth.
Yeah, very true.
Okay. Anything else?
So thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Ashok?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, that was such a fun dialogue and interaction, and good to see the rapid fire questions. The Santhana Coffee with Santhana will have to be now started as part of that. Ashok, based on all the stuff you talked about, I think I should bring you back in an operating role for Thai Boston. I'm thinking I'm always hunting for help now, and I think I should sign you up. We need to figure out the next 25 years of what we should focus on, and some of the questions that you just talked about. I remember the angel discussions really well. Some of them still happen today as well. As to what does the next 25 years look like? What do we do? Shall we fund, not fund? All of those things are still relevant, just a different set of audience. But I would ask, if you have any advice on, as we look at to keep the organization relevant for the next 25 years, what do we have to do? It's kind of one of those, like any suggestions or thoughts you have to say, how do we make it more attractive for the next generation to participate, because we're all getting older?
Yeah, all I can say, first of all, 25 is too far a
Right.
line. You would have no idea what 25 years will bring.
Right.
Now, you have a better chance of finding out than I have. I don't even know if I have 25 years left, but I think
Of course.
So take it in chunks of 5 years. I think that's first thing I would suggest. And second thing, in terms of helping you anytime, man. Yes, we are good friends. Anytime I can have any help.
You can approach me. I think you qualify because you're running a non-profit organization. So
that's right. You can sign him up as an executive, right?
So, okay, I had to give you. No, but I think doing some sort of a soul search in some sort of the 2-step process which I was thinking of. One was to figure out what exactly is going to be happening in the next 5 years or 7 years, and then where the entrepreneurs might end up coming out with new ideas. And almost like TYE, idea generation workshop, for not the young entrepreneurs, not so young entrepreneurs.
Not so young entrepreneurs.
And then coming out with a model for Thai about exactly where would they need help. Because the type of help which was required 25 years ago may not be what they need now.
Very different.
Because the environment has changed. The other providers of help have come in. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing about information is now available everywhere. That's not the case anymore. So what exactly is the help they would need? But you need to figure out that and then move from there about how to do it. But what the world will look
Agreed.
like, what will the entrepreneurs need, and then how to get Thai move into that
See,
direction.
Santhana, he hasn't lost it at all. He's all into this stuff. He's ready to start doing the session already. I remember there was in constant contact building. It was on Trapelo Road, right? That's where we had that session.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's time. It was really fantastic. Ashok, thank you for taking the time and digging in to participate in this thing. Santhana, thank you very much for moderating it. I know it's not easy with lots of stuff happening, but we truly appreciate it. Just as a reminder for people who are signed in, we have more of these things planned. As we get scheduled, we will let you know. Near term, there is a women's pitch competition we're running, which will be on August 25th. We've narrowed down, we have 8 finalists for the women's pitch competition. The winner and the 2 runners up, or at least the winner, will go on to compete at the Thai Global in Hyderabad. So if you have time on August 25th, sign in to hear the pitch from some amazing companies. Other than that, thank you everyone for joining. See you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Till see you. Okay, bye. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right.